He walked into that courtroom with a smile on his face. Derek Ashford thought he had the perfect plan. A DNA test that would destroy his wife. Evidence that would prove she cheated. A single envelope that would hand him full custody of their children and leave her with nothing.
I love you both.
He never bothered to read it himself. What happened next? The judge opened that envelope in front of everyone. Reporters, neighbors, his own mother sitting in the front row. And what she read out loud did not expose his wife at all.
4 years of
It exposed
betrayal
him,
and deliberate
a secret
fraud
child,
against the
a hidden mistress. 4 years of lies that came crashing down
Look
in 30
at my
seconds.
dinosaur.
Caroline Ashford sat there in shock.
It's a
12
T-Rex.
years of marriage, 2 children, a lifetime of trust. All of it was built on lies she never saw coming. But here's the thing about women who have been pushed to their breaking point. Sometimes they do not break. Sometimes they rise. This is her story. The envelope hit the table like a gunshot. Caroline Ashford flinched so hard her coffee cup rattled against its saucer. The sound echoed through the Westbrook County Courthouse. Sharp, final. Like the last nail being driven into a coffin she did not even know was being built around her. She sat at the mahogany defendant's table, her palms leaving moisture prints on the polished wood. The air conditioning hummed too loud overhead, pushing frigid air through vents that had not been cleaned in years. The room smelled like old paper and floor polish and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation. This courthouse had seen plenty of both. 12 years of marriage had led to this moment, this courtroom, this table, this man sitting 20 feet away who used to hold her hand while they slept, who used to whisper that she was the best thing that ever happened to him, who used to make her believe that love was real and permanent and unbreakable. Derek Ashford adjusted his silk tie with the casual confidence of a man who had never lost at anything in his entire life. Navy blue with silver stripes. She had bought him that tie for their 11th anniversary, spent 2 hours at Nordstrom trying to find something that matched his eyes. He wore it today to divorce her. The irony was not lost on Caroline. Nothing was lost on her anymore. She had spent 12 years missing things, overlooking things, explaining away things. Those days were over. His attorney Marcus Webb leaned close, cupping his hand around Derek's ear as he whispered something. Derek's lips curved upward. That smile. Carolyn knew that smile better than she knew her own reflection. She had fallen in love with that smile at a cocktail party 13 years ago. The way the corners of his mouth turned up just slightly more on the left side. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners like he was sharing a private joke that only the two of you understood. She had thought it was charming, boyish, irresistible. Now it made her stomach turn over like she had swallowed something rotten. Your Honor, Marcus Webb rose from his chair, his voice dripping with rehearsed regret the way honey drips from a spoon. Slow, deliberate, calculated. My client has evidence that will fundamentally alter these proceedings. Caroline's divorce attorney, Natalie Brennan, gripped her arm under the table, her fingers pressed hard enough to leave marks through the fabric of Caroline's blazer. A warning, a question, a demand for information all rolled into one desperate squeeze. What is this? Natalie whispered, her lips barely moving. Did you know about this? Caroline shook her head. She had no idea. Derek had not mentioned any evidence. Then again, Derek had not mentioned a lot of things over the past 12 years. She was beginning to understand that now. Judge Miriam Holloway looked up from the stack of papers on her bench. She was a woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that seemed designed to communicate exactly how little nonsense she would tolerate. Reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Deep lines around her mouth from years of frowning at lawyers who wasted her time. Her reputation preceded her throughout the county. Fair but fierce. Compassionate but controlled. She did not tolerate games in her courtroom. Mr. Webb, the judge said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 decades on the bench. This is a custody hearing regarding 2 minor children. Not a talent show, not a dramatic performance. What evidence are you referring to? Marcus Webb picked up the manila envelope from the table. He held it like a trophy, like he had already won the case, the custody battle, and probably the lottery while he was at it. His chest puffed out slightly beneath his $3,000 suit. A DNA test, Your Honor. He paused, letting the words sink in like stones dropped into still water. A DNA test that proves conclusively that my client's wife has been unfaithful throughout their marriage. The words hung in the air, heavy, poisonous, spreading through the courtroom like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything Caroline had built. She felt her hands go cold, not just cold. That specific kind of cold that starts in your fingertips and spreads upward through your wrists and forearms. The cold that comes when your body knows something terrible is happening before your brain has time to process it. The cold of public humiliation. The cold of being stripped naked in front of strangers who will judge you and find you wanting. The cold of watching your entire life crumble while everyone stares and whispers and pretends they are not enjoying the show. The gallery behind her erupted in murmurs. She heard whispers sliding between the wooden benches like snakes through grass. Sharp intakes of breath, the rustle of people leaning forward in their seats, hungry for scandal. Carolyn recognized faces without turning around. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down, the woman who always brought over Christmas cookies and asked too many questions about Derek's work schedule. A mother whose daughter was in Sophie's gymnastics class. The receptionist from Derek's law firm who had always been a little too friendly at office parties. And in the front row, directly behind Derek's table, sat Gwendolyn Ashford, Caroline's mother-in-law for 12 years. A woman who had never once called her by her first name without making it sound like an insult. Her pearls were perfect. Her silver hair was perfect. Her posture was perfect. Her Chanel suit probably cost more than Caroline's first car. Her expression was satisfied, like a cat that had finally caught the mouse it had been stalking for over a decade. "Your Honor," Natalie Brenna said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "this evidence was not submitted in discovery. We have had no opportunity to review it, challenge it, or verify its authenticity. This is highly irregular." "It arrived yesterday, Your Honor," Marcus Webb said, spreading his hands in a gesture of helpless apology that fooled no one. Time-sensitive material, given the significant implications for custody arrangements. Surely the court would want to know if the mother seeking primary custody of these children has been conducting an extramarital affair. Carolyn wanted to scream. She wanted to stand up from this table and shout that it was not true. She had never been unfaithful. Not once. Not ever. Not even in her thoughts during the darkest years of their marriage, when Derek was always working late and she was always alone, and she sometimes wondered if this was all there was to life. But her voice would not come. Her throat had closed around the words like a fist. She could only sit there, frozen in her chair, while the courtroom decided her fate based on evidence she had never seen. Judge Holloway removed her glasses. She cleaned them slowly with a cloth from her pocket, her movements deliberate and unhurried. The silence stretched through the courtroom. Uncomfortable. Suffocating. Every tick of the clock on the wall sounded like a hammer driving another nail. "I will allow the submission," the judge finally said. "However, I will review the documentation myself before any conclusions are drawn. And Mr. Webb, if this turns out to be a fishing expedition or an attempt to prejudice these proceedings with unverified accusations, there will be consequences." "Of course, Your Honor. My client would expect nothing less." Marcus Webb walked forward. His Italian leather shoes clicked on the marble floor with each step. The sound reminded Caroline of a countdown, like a clock ticking toward an explosion that would level everything in its path. He handed the manila envelope to the bailiff. The bailiff, a heavy-set man with kind eyes who had smiled at Caroline when she entered the courtroom, now avoided her gaze as he handed the envelope to the judge. Everyone was already looking at her differently. Everyone was already assuming the worst. Judge Holloway opened the envelope with the careful precision of someone who had handled thousands of pieces of evidence over the course of her career. She pulled out a document, several pages stapled together. She began to read, her eyes moving slowly across the text. Carolyn could not breathe. Her lungs had forgotten how to work. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles went white, the bones showing through her skin like mountain ridges. She thought about her children. Sophie was 11 now, old enough to understand what adultery meant, old enough to hear the whispers at school and connect the dots. She had Derek's bright blue eyes and Caroline's stubborn chin. She was smart and sensitive, and she would be devastated by this. Ethan was 8, still young enough to believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, still young enough to crawl into Caroline's bed during thunderstorms, seeking comfort from the mother who had always protected him. What would this do to him? She thought about her own mother, gone 3 years now, taken by cancer that spread too fast for the doctors to stop. What would she say if she could see this? What advice would she offer? Hold your head up, Caroline. You know the truth. That is all that matters. But it was not all that mattered. Not in this room, not in this moment. In a courtroom, perception was reality. And right now, everyone perceived her as guilty. Derek was still smiling. That satisfied, self-assured smile that said he had already won. Then something changed. Judge Holloway's expression shifted. Her eyebrows rose toward her hairline, then lowered into a frown, then rose again. She flipped to the second page of the document, then the third. Her frown deepened into something that looked almost like disbelief. She looked up from the papers, but not at Carolyn, at Derek. "Mr. Ashford," Judge Holloway said slowly, each word measured and precise, "did you read this document before your attorney submitted it to my court?" Derek's smile flickered, just for a fraction of a second. A crack in the mask so brief that most people would have missed it. But Caroline had been studying that face for 12 years. She saw everything. "I reviewed the summary that my legal team prepared, Your Honor." Derek's voice was still confident, but something underneath had shifted. "They handled the technical details." The technical details. Judge Holloway repeated the words like they were a particularly unfunny joke. "Mr. Ashford, let me be very clear about what I am asking. Did you personally read this DNA test before bringing it into my courtroom as evidence against your wife?" Marcus Webb shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His confident posture wilted like a flower left too long without water. "Your Honor, I can assure you that all proper procedures were followed in the preparation of," he began. "I am asking your client, Mr. Webb, not you. Please sit down." Marcus Webb sat. He looked at Derek with an expression that was rapidly transitioning from confident to concerned. Derek stood. The smile was completely gone now, replaced by something Caroline had rarely seen on his face in 12 years of marriage. Uncertainty. Real, genuine uncertainty. "I trust my team, Your Honor. They would not make errors in something this important." Errors. Judge Holloway set the document down on her bench. The sound of paper hitting wood seemed to echo through the silent courtroom. "Mr. Ashford, are you telling me that you submitted evidence to this court without personally verifying its contents?" You reviewed a summary. You already said that." The judge's voice had gone from cool to cold. "Here is what concerns me, Mr. Ashford. This DNA test does not mention your wife, not once, not anywhere in these 3 pages." The courtroom went absolutely silent, not whisper silent, the kind of silence that feels like pressure building in your ears before a storm breaks. Carolyn gripped the edge of the table. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "This DNA test," Judge Holloway continued, her voice cutting through the air like a blade made of ice, "establishes paternity between one Derek James Ashford and a minor child. The child's name is listed as Miles Robert Kimball, age 4 years and 7 months. Mother listed as Tessa Marie Kimball." The words did not make sense at first. Carolyn heard them, but they bounced off her brain like raindrops off a window. They would not sink in. They would not compute. 4 years old. Miles, Tessa Kimball. Sophie had been 7 when this child was born. Carolyn remembered that year clearly. They had been renovating the kitchen. Derek was working late every single night. He said the firm was demanding. He said the senior partners were piling on cases. He said he was doing it all for them, for their family, for their future. She had believed him, every single word. "There must be some kind of mistake," Derek said. His voice cracked on the word mistake. "This is not what I submitted. Someone must have switched the documents." "Sit down, Mr. Ashford." "Your Honor, please, I need to explain." "I said sit down." Derek's legs seemed to give out beneath him. He collapsed into his chair like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Behind Caroline, Gwendolyn Ashford gasped. The sound was sharp and strangled, completely at odds with the controlled composure she had maintained for every moment of the 12 years Caroline had known her. Carolyn heard pearls clicking as the older woman clutched at her necklace with trembling fingers. Natalie Brennan squeezed Caroline's arm again. But this time the gesture was different. Not warning, not concern, wonder, pure, undisguised wonder. The court will take a 30-minute recess, Judge Holloway announced, her voice ringing with authority. Mr. Webb, I strongly suggest you have a very thorough conversation with your client about the consequences of submitting evidence to this court that he has not personally verified, and about the consequences of that evidence revealing information that he perhaps would have preferred to keep hidden. The gavel came down. The sound rang through the courtroom like a bell announcing the end of something. Carolyn stood. Her legs trembled beneath her, but she forced them to hold her weight. She would not fall. She would not collapse. Not here. Not in front of all these people. She did not look at Derek as she walked toward the door. She could not. If she looked at him, she would fall apart completely. And she refused to give anyone in this room the satisfaction of watching her break. 12 years. She had given him 12 years of her life. 2 children. Her youth. Her trust. Her whole heart laid bare. And the whole time. The whole damn time. She pushed through the heavy courtroom doors and emerged into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellowish glow. The hallway was empty except for a single bailiff at the far end, who glanced at her and then quickly looked away. Carolyn walked to the women's bathroom. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. Each step echoed. Each step took her further from the courtroom and closer to some kind of privacy. She pushed open the bathroom door, checked under every stall. Empty. She locked herself in the last stall, sat down on the closed toilet lid, still wearing her courtroom clothes. Her modest navy dress that she had chosen specifically because it looked respectable and maternal. Her sensible low heels that she had picked because Derek always said high heels made her look like she was trying too hard. She sat there in the fluorescent lit bathroom stall of the Westbrook County Courthouse, and she started counting tiles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The floor was made of small white ceramic tiles with gray grout between them. Institutional. Ugly. The kind of tiles that were chosen because they were cheap and easy to clean, not because anyone would ever want to look at them. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This was what she did when the world fell apart. She counted things, tiles, ceiling panels, bricks in a wall, anything to stop the thoughts from spinning out of control. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, she pulled it out with shaking hands. An unknown number. A text message. I'm sorry you found out this way. I did not know he was married when we started. Not at first. By the time I learned the truth, everything was already complicated. I have documents, bank records, emails, things you need to see, things that will help you. Contact me when you are ready. My name is Tessa. Carolyn stared at the message. The letters blurred, came back into focus, blurred again. The other woman, the mother of her husband's secret child, the woman who had been living a parallel life for 4 years while Caroline made school lunches and drove carpool and believed she was building something real. She wanted to help. Caroline did not know whether to laugh or scream or throw up. So she just sat there in the bathroom stall of the Westbrook County Courthouse, counting tiles until the numbers stopped making sense. The world had changed in 30 minutes. Everything she thought she knew was gone. Everything she believed about her life, her marriage, her husband, had been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. And somehow, this was just the beginning. The courtroom doors opened again at exactly 10:15 in the morning. Carolyn walked back in on legs that felt borrowed from someone else. Each step required concentration. Left foot forward, transfer weight. Right foot forward, transfer weight. Do not stumble, do not trip. Do not let anyone see how close you are to shattering into a million pieces. The gallery was fuller than before, much fuller. Word had spread through the courthouse like wildfire through dry brush. Lawyers from other cases had abandoned their files. Clerks had found excuses to be in the hallway. Even a few reporters had materialized, notepads in hand, sensing blood in the water. Nothing traveled faster in this town than scandal, and a prominent attorney accidentally revealing his own secret child while trying to accuse his wife of infidelity. That was the kind of scandal that would fuel cocktail party conversations for years. Carolyn recognized more faces than before. Derek's law partner, James Whitfield, and his wife, Marjorie, who had hosted them for dinner just 3 months ago. Two women from Caroline's book club who had claimed they were too busy to attend the hearing. The assistant principal from Sophie's elementary school, which meant this story would spread through the school community by tomorrow. They had all come to watch her humiliation. Instead, they had witnessed something entirely different. But the looks they gave her now were not sympathetic. They were curious, hungry. They wanted to see what would happen next. Carolyn took her seat next to Natalie. The attorney gave her a small nod. Professional, reassuring. But Carolyn could see the questions burning behind her eyes. Derek sat at his table. His $1,000 haircut had been disturbed by nervous fingers running through it over and over during the recess. His perfectly pressed suit looked somehow rumpled, like he had been tugging at his collar. His face had gone from confident bronze to something closer to gray ash. He would not look at her. Good. She did not want his eyes on her anyway. Marcus Webb sat beside him, but the easy confidence had drained out of the attorney's posture. He kept shuffling papers that did not need to be shuffled, adjusting glasses that did not need to be adjusted. The body language of a man who was rapidly recalculating his strategy and not liking the numbers. Gwendolyn Ashford was still in the front row, but her satisfied expression had vanished completely. In its place was something harder to read. Shock, anger, betrayal, horror. All four emotions seemed to be fighting for control of her carefully maintained features. Her pearls trembled against her collarbone. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that Carolyn could see the white of her knuckles from across the room. Judge Holloway entered. Everyone rose. The bailiff called the court to order. Everyone sat. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Before we continue with the scheduled proceedings, Judge Holloway said, her voice carrying easily through the packed courtroom, I want to address the matter of the DNA test that was submitted by Mr. Ashford's counsel during the first session this morning. Marcus Webb stood, straightening his tie with fingers that were not quite steady. Your Honor, my client and I have had an opportunity to discuss the situation during the recess. It appears there was an administrative error in the preparation and organization of the documents. We respectfully request that the submission be withdrawn from the record and stricken from consideration. An administrative error. Judge Holloway repeated the phrase with the kind of acid precision that made lawyers develop nervous twitches. Mr. Webb, are you seriously suggesting that your client accidentally submitted evidence of his own extramarital affair and the existence of a secret child while attempting to accuse his wife of infidelity? Muffled sounds rippled through the gallery, coughs that might have been suppressed laughter. A strangled snort from somewhere in the back rows. Your Honor, the circumstances are complicated, and your client submitted a DNA test to this court, a DNA test that he claimed would prove his wife's unfaithfulness. Instead, that DNA test proves that he fathered a child with another woman during his marriage. Judge Holloway leaned forward slightly. That is not an administrative error, Mr. Webb. That is either spectacular incompetence or something approaching divine intervention. Derek surged to his feet. Your Honor, this is clearly a setup. My wife somehow arranged for these documents to be switched. She must have known about the test and manipulated. Mr. Ashford, the judge's voice could have frozen molten lava. You are currently representing yourself since your attorney appears to be operating in an advisory capacity only, which means you should know that interrupting these proceedings is not permitted. Sit down. Do not speak again unless directly addressed. And if you attempt to blame your wife for evidence that you yourself submitted to this court, I will hold you in contempt so fast your head will spin. Derek sat. His face had gone from gray to red. His hands were shaking visibly now. Caroline watched him. This man she had married. This man she had loved. This man she had built a life with and borne children for and believed in, despite all the small doubts that had whispered in the back of her mind. Something shifted inside her chest. Not triumph, not joy, something more complicated than either of those simple emotions. Validation tangled with grief. Relief wrapped around devastation like vines choking a tree. The DNA test proved Derek had a 4-year-old son with another woman, a woman named Tessa Marie Kimball. That meant the affair had been going on for at least 5 years, probably longer, maybe much longer. 5 years. Sophie had been in first grade when it started, learning to read, losing her first baby teeth, and putting them under her pillow for the tooth fairy. Coming home with crayon drawings of their family, mommy with yellow hair, daddy with blue eyes, Sophie in a pink dress, baby Ethan in a diaper, their house with a red door, a sun in the corner with rays spreading out like a child's dream of happiness. What had Derek been doing while Sophie drew those pictures? While she believed so completely in the family her father was already betraying, the answer sat on the judge's bench, printed in black and white, notarized and official. The DNA evidence will remain in the record, Judge Holloway announced. It is directly relevant to matters of character, honesty, and fitness for custody that this court must consider. Mr. Ashford chose to make fidelity an issue in these proceedings. He can live with the consequences of that choice. Your Honor, that is highly prejudicial to my client's position, Marcus Webb protested, but his heart was clearly not in it anymore. The evidence was not intended to. It does not matter what it was intended to do, Mr. Webb. It matters what it does. And what it does is reveal that your client has been maintaining a secret family while presenting himself to this court as a devoted father seeking custody of his children. The judge shuffled some papers on her bench. Now, can we please proceed with the actual business of this hearing, or would your client like to submit more evidence that undermines his own case? The hearing continued from there. Custody schedules, asset division discussions, child support calculations. The mundane machinery of a marriage being legally dismantled. Carolyn answered when asked, nodded when appropriate, signed the documents where indicated, but her mind was elsewhere. Tessa Marie Kimball, mother of Miles Robert Kimball, age 4 years and 7 months. She had the woman's phone number saved in her phone now. A message asking to meet, offering documents and information that Caroline needed to see. What did Tessa know? What records did she have? What else had Derek hidden? More importantly, why was the other woman reaching out? What did she want? The hearing ended at 12:30. Temporary custody was split evenly pending further proceedings. The marital home remained jointly owned for now. Derek would continue staying in his downtown apartment, the one he had rented 3 months ago, when Caroline finally asked him to leave. Caroline would remain in the family home with the children. Small victories, hollow ones. Caroline gathered her things and walked out of the courthouse into the November air. The sun was bright, too bright, aggressively cheerful in a way that felt like mockery. The sky had no right to be so blue on a day when her entire life had been revealed as a lie. She reached the bottom of the stone steps before a voice stopped her. Carolyn, she turned. Gwendolyn Ashford stood at the top of the courthouse steps, silhouetted against the midday sun. Her Chanel suit was still immaculate. Her posture was still perfect, but something had cracked in the facade. The older woman looked like she had aged 10 years in the past 2 hours. Gwendolyn, Carolyn said. She did not know what else to say. In 12 years, she had never found the right words for her mother-in-law. She was not about to start now. Gwendolyn descended the steps slowly. Her heels clicked on the stone. When she reached Caroline, she stopped about 3 feet away, close enough to speak privately, far enough to maintain the distance that had always existed between them. I did not know. The words came out stiff, forced, like they were being dragged from somewhere deep against Gwendolyn's will. About the child, about the woman, about any of it. Carolyn studied her mother-in-law's face, the tight lines around her mouth, the slight tremor in her jaw, the moisture gathering in eyes that Caroline had never once seen cry. I believe you, Caroline said, and she did. Gwendolyn Ashford was many things: cold, judgmental, dismissive, impossibly demanding. But she was not a liar. She valued honesty the way other people valued money or status. It was the one thing she and Caroline had ever had in common. He is my son, Gwendolyn said. My only child. I thought I knew him. So did I. They stood there in the November sunshine, two women who had never liked each other, united by the common experience of being deceived by the same man. This changes nothing about how I feel about you, Gwendolyn said finally. Her voice had regained some of its customary ice. I know. Caroline was not surprised. Gwendolyn had made her opinion of Caroline clear from their very first meeting. Too middle class, too ordinary, not sophisticated enough for the Ashford family name. Those opinions would not change because of Derek's mistakes. But it changes everything about how I feel about him. Those words did surprise Caroline. She looked at her mother-in-law more carefully, saw the way Gwendolyn's hands were trembling despite being clasped tightly together, saw the moisture in her eyes threatening to spill over. Gwendolyn Ashford did not cry. Ever. Caroline had watched the woman deliver a eulogy at her own husband's funeral without shedding a single tear. She had sat through Sophie's birth with dry eyes and mild complaints about hospital coffee. "He lied to me," Gwendolyn said. Her voice cracked slightly on the word lied. "He looked me in the eye and he lied. About money, about his marriage, about a grandchild I never even knew existed." "I am sorry," Caroline said, and she meant it. Whatever complicated feelings she had about her mother-in-law, she understood what it felt like to have your trust shattered by someone you loved. "Do not apologize to me." Gwendolyn's voice hardened again. "I should be the one apologizing to you." I believed him. Every time he complained about you being difficult, every time he said you were too demanding or too emotional or too controlling, I believed my son over my own judgment. Carolyn waited. The apology hung between them, incomplete but more real than anything Gwendolyn had ever said to her. "I still do not particularly like you," Gwendolyn added, which was so predictably Gwendolyn that Caroline almost smiled. "I know, the feeling has always been mutual. But I was wrong about him. I raised a liar, and I do not know how to live with that." The older woman turned and walked away before Caroline could respond. Her heels clicked on the sidewalk. Her posture remained rigidly perfect, but something in the way she moved spoke of a woman whose foundations had just been shattered. Caroline stood alone at the bottom of the courthouse steps. The sun was warm on her face. The air smelled like fallen leaves and distant car exhaust, and the particular November scent of things dying before winter. She pulled out her phone, read Tessa's message again, then typed a response before she could talk herself out of it. "I can meet tomorrow. Name the time and place." The response came within seconds, as if Tessa had been waiting with her phone in her hand. "The diner on Route 9, 2 in the afternoon. I will have my son with me. I hope that is okay." Her husband's other child, the 4-year-old boy whose existence had just blown apart her entire life. "It is fine," Carolyn typed back. "I will see you there." She put the phone back in her purse. Rachel's silver Honda pulled up to the curb. Her best friend since college leaned across the passenger seat, her red hair falling across her face as she pushed open the door. "Get in," Rachel said. "We are getting wine, lots of wine, and possibly consulting with a lawyer who specializes in making cheating husbands regret every single life choice they have ever made." Carolyn almost smiled. Almost. She got in the car, buckled her seatbelt, leaned her head against the cold window glass. "I cannot believe it," she said as Rachel pulled away from the courthouse. 4 years. He had another child for 4 years. That little boy is almost as old as Ethan was when he started walking. "I can believe it," Rachel said quietly. Carolyn turned to look at her friend. "What do you mean?" Rachel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Her knuckles went white. "I never liked him, Caroline. You know that. I have made no secret of it since the day you introduced us." "You never said anything specific, though. Just general comments about him being too slick. Would you have listened?" Rachel's voice was gentle but honest, painfully honest. "You were so in love with him, so sure he was the one. I did not want to be the friend who destroys a marriage and then has to watch it work out anyway. I did not want to lose you over suspicions I could not prove." Carolyn thought about that, all the times Rachel had changed the subject when Derek came up in conversation, all the times she had found convenient excuses to leave when he arrived at gatherings. The polite smile that never quite reached her eyes when she congratulated them on anniversaries or holidays. The signs had been there. Carolyn just had not wanted to see them. "What did you know?" she asked. "Nothing specific, nothing concrete, just a feeling." Rachel turned onto the main road, heading toward the wine bar they had been going to since their 20s. "The way he looked at other women when you were not watching, The way he talked about you when you were not in the room, little things that added up to a bigger picture I did not want to be right about. Little things, Caroline repeated. They add up. They always add up. They add up. Yes, they did. 12 years of little things, dismissive comments disguised as jokes. Plans canceled at the last minute for work emergencies that now seem suspicious. Money that never quite added up the way it should. Late nights at the office that stretched into early mornings. Phones angled away from her line of sight during text conversations. I was not crazy, Caroline thought with sudden, fierce clarity. I knew something was wrong. I felt it in my bones for years. I just let him convince me I was imagining things. She had doubted herself so many times. Wondered if she was being paranoid, insecure, irrational. Wondered if the problem was her expectations instead of his behavior. Derek had made her feel that way. Every time she questioned anything. Every time she noticed something that did not add up. He had a way of twisting her concerns back on her, making her feel small, foolish, ungrateful for the life he was providing. I spent 12 years thinking I was the problem, Caroline said quietly, watching the familiar streets slide past outside the window. That I was too suspicious, too demanding, too much. You were never the problem, Rachel said firmly. Not once, not ever. He made me think I was. That is exactly what men like him do. Rachel reached over and squeezed Caroline's hand. They make you doubt everything. Your memory of what happened, your perception of reality, your worth as a person. It is deliberate, it is calculated, and it is a form of abuse, Carolyn. Psychological abuse. Abuse, the word sat heavy in the car between them. Caroline had never thought of it that way. Derek had never hit her, never screamed at her in rage, never threatened her or the children. He was too smart for anything that obvious. But the damage was there, invisible, internal, like rot in the walls of a beautiful house that looks perfect from the outside but is slowly collapsing from within. 12 years of being made to feel less than. 12 years of having her reality questioned and her confidence eroded. 12 years of loving a man who saw her as something to be managed instead of someone to be cherished. I have more information coming, Carolyn said. Tessa, the other woman, she reached out, says she has documents, bank records, emails, things I need to see. Rachel raised an eyebrow. You are going to meet with her? Tomorrow, at the diner on Route 9. Do you want me to come with you? Carolyn thought about it, then shook her head. No, this is something I need to do myself. I need to look her in the eye and understand what happened. All of it, even the parts that hurt. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, but call me the second it is over. And if she turns out to be crazy or trying to scam you or anything else suspicious, you get out of there immediately. Promise me. I promise, but they pulled into the parking lot of the wine bar. The lunch crowd was sparse on a Tuesday. They would have privacy for this conversation. One more thing, Rachel said before they got out of the car. The documents Tessa has, whatever they show, you need to be prepared for it to be worse than you think. How could it possibly be worse? Rachel's expression was sad and knowing. With men like Derek, it is always worse than you think. That is the one thing I learned from my parents' divorce. The first secret is never the only secret. Carolyn opened her door and stepped out into the November afternoon. The first secret is never the only secret. She had a feeling she was about to find out exactly how true that was. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon rolls and burnt espresso and something that might have been pumpkin spice candles. Carolyn sat at their usual table near the window, the one she and Derek had shared every Sunday morning for the first 8 years of their marriage. Back when they still did things like have Sunday mornings together. Back when she still believed in the life they were building brick by careful brick. The chair across from her was empty now, but the memories were not. She could see him sitting there so clearly it almost hurt. Younger Derek. Happier Derek. Or at least Derek who was better at pretending to be happy. He used to read the business section while she worked on the crossword puzzle. Their feet would tangle together under the table. A silent language of touch that said, I am here, I love you, this is enough. Had any of it been real? Or had she been performing in a play without knowing there was even a script? The question had chased her through another sleepless night. She had lain in their bed, her bed now, staring at the ceiling, counting the shadows, trying to separate genuine memories from manufactured ones. Their wedding day. June 15th, 12 years ago. She remembered every detail like it was yesterday. The way Derek had looked at her as she walked down the aisle in her mother's vintage lace dress. His eyes had filled with tears. His voice had cracked 3 times during his vows. Their guests had dabbed at their own eyes, moved by the obvious depth of his emotion. "You are my everything," he had whispered when the ceremony was over and they were finally alone in the reception hall's back office. "My past, my present, my future. I will never let you down." She had believed him with every fiber of her being. But Tessa's message said the affair started 5 years ago, which meant for 7 years after that wedding, Derek had been faithful, or at least had appeared to be faithful. There had been good years, she was almost certain of it. Or had he just been better at hiding things back then? The first Christmas after Sophie was born floated into her mind. Derek assembling the crib at 3 in the morning because the one they ordered had been back-ordered and only arrived on Christmas Eve. He had been sweating and swearing under his breath, struggling with instructions written in broken English. "This is absolutely ridiculous," he had muttered, stabbing a screwdriver at a stubborn bolt. Who designs these death traps? Engineers who hate parents? But he had finished it. He had assembled every single piece while Caroline nursed their newborn daughter and laughed at his increasingly creative profanity. By the time Sophie woke for her first Christmas morning, her crib was standing perfect and proud next to their bed. That had been real. It had to have been real. His face when Carolyn told him she was pregnant with Ethan. They had been trying for 2 years by then. Month after month of negative pregnancy tests, enforced optimism, and silent grief. When she showed him the positive test, he had dropped to his knees right there in their bathroom, pressed his forehead against her still flat stomach. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "Hello in there. I am your dad. I already love you more than I can say." Real or performance. The vacation to Hawaii for their 10th anniversary. They had saved for 2 years to afford it. Fancy resort, ocean view room, sunset dinners on this beach with tiki torches and live music. "I would marry you all over again," Derek had said on their last night, holding her hand as they watched the sun sink into the Pacific. "Every single day, for the rest of my life." Real or performance? Which parts of their marriage had been genuine love and which had been carefully constructed lies? How do you untangle 12 years of memories when you no longer trust the person who shared them with you? "More coffee?" Caroline looked up, startled out of her spiraling thoughts. The waitress was young, early 20s, maybe still in college. She had kind brown eyes and a name tag that read Brittany. "Yes, please, thank you." Brittany refilled her cup from the carafe she was carrying. Steam rose in lazy spirals, carrying the bitter scent of coffee that had been sitting too long. "Are you doing okay?" the girl asked, tilting her head slightly. "You look like you are carrying something heavy. And I do not mean the emotional kind of heavy, although you kind of look like that too. I just mean you seem lost in something hard." Carolyn attempted a smile. It probably looked more like a grimace. "Just thinking about the past, trying to figure out which parts were real." "That is a tricky thing." Brittany set the carafe down on the edge of the table. "My mom went through something similar a few years ago. She always says you cannot change the past, but you can choose which parts of it you bring into the future." Simple wisdom from a girl who could not be much older than 20. Sometimes the simplest wisdom was the most profound. "Your mom sounds like a smart woman." "She is," Brittany grinned. "She survived 20 years with my dad and came out stronger. Said the best revenge is building a life so good that you forget revenge was ever the point." Carolyn filed that away somewhere in her mind. Building a life so good that you forget revenge was ever the point. There was something worth remembering there. "Thank you for the coffee and the words." Brittany smiled warmly. "Good luck with whatever you are working through." She picked up her carafe and moved on to the next table. Caroline sat with her memories a few more minutes. The Sunday morning breakfast, the anniversary dinners, the Christmas mornings and birthday parties and ordinary Tuesday evenings that had made up the fabric of her marriage. Some of it had been real. She had to believe that. Some of it had been genuine love and genuine connection. Derek was not capable of faking everything for 12 straight years. But how much? In which parts? Those were questions that might never have answers. Her phone buzzed. Natalie's name appeared on the screen. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I have found something in the financial records, something you need to see. Caroline paid for her coffee and left a generous tip for Brittany. The November air bit at her cheeks as she walked to her car. She welcomed the cold. It made her feel something other than numb. Natalie's office was in a renovated brick building downtown, the kind of place that used to be a warehouse before lawyers and tech startups discovered the appeal of exposed brick walls and high ceilings. The waiting room had leather chairs and abstract art and magazines that were actually current issues. The receptionist waved Caroline through immediately. Natalie was waiting in her office with the door open. "Close the door behind you," Natalie said. Her face was serious, more serious than Caroline had ever seen it, and Natalie had always been a serious person. The conference table in the corner was covered with documents, bank statements, legal filings, spreadsheets with highlighted columns and handwritten notes in the margins. "Tell me," Caroline said. "Sit down first." "I would rather stand." Natalie nodded slowly, accepting this. "All right, 3 months ago, Derek took out a second mortgage on your house, $350,000. The words hit like a punch to the solar plexus. Caroline grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "What?" "The loan documents show your signature, but I had a handwriting expert look at them this morning." Natalie handed her a document. "He forged your name. The expert's opinion is preliminary, but clear. That is not your signature." Caroline looked at the paper, saw her name written at the bottom of a loan agreement. The handwriting was close to hers, close enough to fool a loan officer who was not looking too carefully. But the pressure was wrong, the slant slightly off, the flourish at the end of her last name too pronounced. "He forged my signature," she said slowly, "for $350,000. Yes. On our home, the home where our children live. Yes." "What did he do with the money?" Natalie pulled out another folder, opened it to reveal photographs of a condominium, modern, expensive, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the river. A 2-bedroom condominium in the Riverside Towers complex, purchased 11 months ago. Title is in Tessa Kimball's name. Carolyn stared at the photographs. The condo was beautiful. Open floor plan, gourmet kitchen, the kind of place she had dreamed about before settling into suburban family life. "He bought her an apartment, with money stolen from our family." "That is not all." Natalie produced more documents. Bank transfer records, dozens of them. Monthly payments of $4,000, going back 4 years, deposited into an account in Tessa Kimball's name. Caroline did the math automatically. $4,000 a month for 4 years, 48 months, $192,000, plus a condo down payment, plus who knew what else. He was supporting her, while telling me we could not afford to fix the furnace. The anger was rising now, hot and sharp like bile in her throat. He said we could not take the kids to Disney World because times were tight. He said we needed to cut back on groceries. He let our daughter drop out of dance class because the fees were too expensive. I know. While he was writing checks to his mistress for $4,000 every single month. There is more. Of course there was. There was always more with Derek. Every time you thought you had found the bottom, there was another layer of deception waiting below. "His mother's accounts," Natalie said. "Gwendolyn has a family trust. Derek is listed as trustee, which gives him access to the funds for specific purposes. Over the past 2 years, he has been making unauthorized withdrawals. He has been stealing from his own mother. Approximately $200,000. She does not know. At least, she did not know as of this morning." Carolyn found herself laughing. The sound came out harsh and slightly hysterical. "Gwendolyn is going to murder him. Literally murder him. She might hire someone to do it. There is something even better." Natalie pulled out one more document. "His law firm has been conducting an internal investigation for the past 6 months. Client funds appear to be missing. They have been building a case quietly, trying to determine the extent of the problem. And your divorce filing accelerated their timeline. They were planning to handle this internally. Let Derek resign quietly, keep it out of the papers, avoid embarrassment for the firm. But now, with the day test fiasco and everything that came out in court, they cannot protect him anymore. Carolyn sat down. Her legs would not hold her anymore. The weight of information was too much. She picked up Natalie's paper clips and started sorting them by color. Red in one pile, blue in another, green in a third, yellow, purple, silver. A small act of control when everything else was spiraling into chaos. He made me feel crazy, she said quietly. Her voice was low and dangerous, even to her own ears. Every time I asked about our finances, every time I questioned why we were always stretched so thin, he acted like I was being unreasonable, like I was being paranoid and ungrateful. I know. He told me we could not afford Sophie's dance classes. He said Ethan's braces would have to wait. He made me feel guilty for buying myself new running shoes. I know. And the whole time, she set down the paper clips. Her hands were steady now. The anger had burned away the trembling. The whole time he was funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars to his mistress and his secret child, while his family went without. Yes, Carolyn stood, walked to the window. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had changed. Cars drove past. Pedestrians walked dogs. A mother pushed a stroller across the street. Normal life. For everyone except her. I want to meet her, Carolyn said without turning around. Tessa, I want to hear everything she knows. Everything she has. Is that wise? She could have her own agenda. Everyone has an agenda. At least she is being honest about reaching out. Carolyn finally turned to face her attorney. I need to understand, Natalie. I need to know everything, even the parts that hurt. Natalie was quiet for a long moment. Be careful, she finally said. Do not agree to anything without talking to me first. And do not share any information about our legal strategy. I'm meeting her tomorrow, 2 o'clock, the diner on Route 9. I will have a private investigator on standby in case you need backup. Carolyn almost smiled at that. You think she is dangerous? I think she is desperate, and desperate people are unpredictable. Natalie paused. But I also think she might be exactly what we need, an inside witness, someone who can testify to Derek's pattern of lies and manipulation. She is not a strategic asset. She is a woman who was caught in the same trap I did. She can be both things at once. That is the nature of complicated situations. Carolyn picked up her purse, headed for the door. Caroline, she turned, you are handling this remarkably well. Most people in your situation would be falling apart. No, Caroline said, I am not handling it at all. I am just too angry to fall apart. The falling apart will come later. Right now I have work to do. She walked out before Natalie could respond. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. 17 floors of thinking about the man she had married, the life she had built, the lies she had believed. When the doors opened, she walked out into the November afternoon with a new sense of purpose. Derek had built an empire of lies. He had stolen from his wife, his mother, his clients, his children. But empires fall. They always fall, and she was going to help push us down. The diner on Route 9 was a relic from another era. Red vinyl booths that had been reupholstered so many times the color varied from cherry to rust. A jukebox in the corner that actually took quarters and played actual records. Pie cases by the cash register displaying chocolate cream and apple crumble and lemon meringue that looked like it had been there since the Eisenhower administration. Caroline arrived 15 minutes early. She chose a booth in the back corner, away from the windows that faced the parking lot, away from the elderly couple sharing a plate of pancakes at the counter. She wanted privacy for this conversation. The waitress was named Dolores according to her faded name tag. She was probably in her 60s, with steel gray hair pinned up in a style that had not been fashionable since 1985. She wine 85. She brought coffee without being asked and refilled it twice without being prompted. This was that kind of place. They knew their customers. They knew who needed caffeine before they could face whatever was coming next. At 2 o'clock exactly, the bell over the door jingled. Caroline looked up. Tessa Kimball was younger than she had expected. Late 20s, 29, maybe 30 at most. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that revealed a face free of makeup. She wore jeans and a gray sweater that had been washed enough times to go soft. No jewelry except small silver studs in her ears. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. A nervous energy in the way she scanned the diner before locating Carolyn's booth. Lines of stress around her mouth that should not exist on someone so young. A small boy held her hand. He had brown hair that curled slightly at his temples and bright blue eyes that Carolyn recognized immediately because she had looked into them every day for 12 years. Derek's eyes, in a face that was otherwise all Tessa. The boy was carrying a coloring book with dinosaurs on the cover and a small box of crayons that had seen better days. "Thank you for meeting me," Tessa said as she slid into the booth across from Carolyn. Her voice was soft and uncertain, like she was not sure this was a good idea anymore now that she was actually here. "Sit down. Order whatever you want." Tessa settled Miles into the booth beside her. He immediately opened his coloring book and selected a green crayon, seemingly oblivious to the tension radiating between the two women. "His name is Miles," Tessa said, looking at her son with an expression that mixed fierce love with profound sadness. "He will be 5 in March." "I know, the DNA test." Tessa flinched like she had been slapped. "I did not know he was going to do that. Bring the test to court." "I did not even know the test existed until I saw the news this morning." "The news?" "It made the local paper's website. Prominent attorney's custody gambit backfires spectacularly. Someone in the courthouse must have leaked the story." Tessa's voice was bitter. "My phone has been ringing all day. Reporters, Derek's law partners, my mother, who I have not spoken to in 3 years. How did the DNA test end up in that envelope?" "I honestly do not know." Tessa shook her head slowly. "Derek must have had it done at some point, maybe when Miles was born, to confirm paternity before he agreed to financial support. The paperwork got mixed up somehow when his legal team was preparing for your hearing. Or someone mixed it up deliberately," Carolyn thought. But she kept that possibility to herself. There would be time to explore it later. "You said in your message that you did not know he was married." "Not at first." Tessa nodded. Her eyes were wet now, tears threatening to spill over. "I was working as a paralegal at his firm. It was my first real job out of community college. I was 24 and he was this charming, successful attorney who actually seemed interested in my opinions. Let me guess. He said his marriage was already over. He said you were separated, that you had filed for divorce, but it was taking forever to finalize. He said you were impossible to live with, cold and controlling, and refusing to show him any affection. That you stayed together only for the children, but slept in separate bedrooms. The familiar lies, the playbook that men like Derek used over and over because it worked over and over. I made him lunch every day for 12 years, Caroline said quietly. I ironed his shirts. I raised his children while he worked 80-hour weeks, or what he claimed were 80-hour weeks. I was anything but cold. I know that now. Tessa's voice cracked. By the time I figured out the truth, I was already pregnant, and I was scared, and I was alone, and I was incredibly stupid. When did you find out he was really married? About 6 months in, I overheard a colleague mention his daughter's dance recital, talking about how Derek could not stop bragging about her. Sophie, she said, such a pretty name, such a talented little girl. Carolyn closed her eyes for a moment. Sophie's first dance recital when she was 8 years old. Pink tutu and butterfly wings and jazz hands that she had practiced for weeks. Derek had cried in the audience. Carolyn had thought it was because he was a loving, emotional father. Now she wondered what he had really been crying about. Why did you stay with him after you knew? Because I was pregnant by then. Because I had no family. My father is dead, and my mother and I were estranged. Because I had quit my job at the firm when the relationship became serious. Because Derek was the only support system I had. He isolated you. I did not see it that way at the time. I thought he was taking care of me, protecting our baby. Tessa looked down at Miles, who was carefully coloring a T-Rex blue. By the time I understood what was really happening, I was trapped. He promised to leave me. Constantly, for 4 years, he promised and promised and promised, always an excuse for why it was not the right time. The kids needed stability. The firm was going through transitions. Your mother had just died and he could not kick you while you were down. My mother died 3 years ago. I know. He used her death as an excuse for 6 months. The manipulation, the control, the endless promises that kept Tessa hoping and waiting and dependent. Derek had done to her exactly what he had done to Caroline, just with different tools. What changed? Caroline asked. Why did you finally decide to reach out? Tessa was quiet for a long moment. Miles finished his blue dinosaur and started on another one, this time reaching for a purple crayon. He stopped paying child support 6 months ago. Said he was having cash flow problems because of the divorce. Said if I caused any trouble or went to the authorities, he would make sure I never worked in the legal field again. He threatened you. He more than threatened. He sent me screenshots of job applications I had submitted to other firms, applications I never told him about. He has connections everywhere. He made it very clear that my career, my reputation, my ability to support my son, all of it depended on keeping quiet. So why are you talking to me now? Tessa looked up, met Caroline's eyes directly for the first time. Because I watched what he did to you in that courtroom. I saw the news coverage, the quotes from people who were there. He was going to humiliate you, destroy your reputation, take your children away from you, all based on lies. And I realized that I have been afraid for 4 years, afraid of him, afraid of what he could do to me, afraid of being alone. But watching him try to destroy you, another woman who had done nothing wrong except trust him, I could not stay silent anymore. Tessa reached into the large bag she had brought, pulled out a thick manila folder. Emails, text messages, screenshots of conversations, bank transfer records. Everything I have saved over the past 4 years. Everything that proves what kind of man he really is. She pushed the folder across the table. Carolyn opened it, started reading. The first document was an email from Derek to Tessa, dated 3.5 years ago. She does not understand me the way you do. She is cold and frigid and only interested in the children. You are the one I want to be with. Soon we will be together for real. I promise. Carolyn read the words without flinching. They did not hurt anymore. They were just evidence, proof of a pattern, documentation of a lie. The second email was more recent. Derek to his accountant. Move the funds before she files discovery requests. She will not know where to look. Use the Cayman account like we discussed. There is a hidden account, Carolyn said, looking up from the papers. Offshore. Where is the rest of our money? Page 47. Tessa nodded toward the folder. I do not know exactly how much is in there, but based on the transfers I have seen over the years, it is significant. Probably close to $1 million. Carolyn flipped to page 47. Bank routing numbers for an account in the Cayman Islands. Transfer dates going back 3 years. A web of financial deception that spanned borders and jurisdictions. Why did you keep all this? Insurance. Tessa's voice was flat, stripped of emotion. Derek taught me that much, even if he did not mean to. Always have leverage, always protect yourself, always have something to bargain with when things go wrong. You thought things would go wrong. I knew they would, eventually. Tessa looked at her son again. Miles was on his third dinosaur now, a purple stegosaurus with orange spots. Men like Derek do not change. They just find new victims. The waitress approached to take their order. Tessa asked for coffee and a grilled cheese sandwich for Miles. Caroline ordered nothing. Her stomach was too knotted for food. When Dolores walked away, Caroline returned to the documents. Page after page of evidence. Text messages filled with lies and promises. Bank records showing systematic financial manipulation. Photos of the condo that Derek had purchased with stolen money. One text message stood out. From Derek to Tessa, sent just 2 weeks ago. The hearing is coming up. I need you to stay quiet. If she finds out about you, I lose everything. Do you understand? Everything. He was trying to keep you hidden, Caroline said, right up until the end. He thought he could control every variable. He always thinks that. Tessa's voice was tired. He never expected his own evidence to betray him. Miles looked up from his coloring. Mommy, can I have apple juice? Of course, sweetheart. I will ask the waitress. Tessa flagged down Dolores and ordered juice for her son. When she turned back to Caroline, Her expression had shifted, more vulnerable, more desperate. I want you to know something. I am not here because I think we should be friends. I am not here because I want forgiveness. I am here because I want my son to have what he deserves. Which is what? A father who acknowledges him. Child support that actually gets paid. Maybe someday a relationship with his half-siblings. Tessa's voice wavered. He has a brother and sister he has never met. That is not fair to him. Caroline looked at Miles, really looked at him. The 4-year-old boy who was coloring dinosaurs without any idea that his entire existence had just upended multiple lives. He was Sophie and Ethan's half-brother. He shared their DNA, their father, their family legacy, whether anyone wanted to acknowledge it or not. It is not fair to anyone, Caroline said finally. This whole situation, none of it is fair. No, it is not. They sat in silence for a moment. The jukebox in the corner played an old country song about broken hearts and second chances. Miles hummed along without knowing the words. I do not hate you, Caroline said. Tessa looked startled. You should. I wouldn't if I were you. Maybe I should, but I do not have the energy for hate right now. And honestly, you did not do this. You did not make Derek lie. You did not make him steal money or forge my signature or build an entire parallel life based on deception. He did all of that himself. I stayed with him after I knew the truth. That makes me complicit. Does it? You were 24 years old, pregnant, alone, and dependent on a man who was systematically manipulating you. What were your realistic options? Tessa did not answer. Her hands were shaking slightly around her coffee cup. We are both his victims, Carolina continued. The only difference is I had 12 years. You only had 5. Thank you. The words came out as a whisper, barely audible over the diner noise. You have no idea. I have not slept in days. I thought you would hate me. I thought I would too, but sitting here looking at you and your son, all I feel is tired. Tired and angry at the man who did this to both of us. Miles held up his coloring page. Look, Mommy, 3 dinosaurs. The blue one is Rex, the purple one is Lily, the orange one is their friend Spike. They are beautiful, baby, showed the nice lady. Miles slid his coloring page across the table toward Caroline. She looked at it carefully, studying the earnest effort of a 4-year-old's artwork. These are wonderful, she said. You are a very good artist, Miles. He beamed with the uncomplicated joy that only small children can achieve. Then he went back to his coloring book, already starting a new page. Sophie and Ethan should know about him eventually, Caroline said quietly, when things settle down. When we figure out how to explain all of this. Tessa's eyes filled with tears again. You would do that? After everything? It is not his fault. None of this is his fault. He did not ask to be born into this situation. Carolyn looked at the little boy who shared her children's blood. They deserve to know each other. Whatever happens between the adults, the children are innocent. Thank you. I do not know what to say. I do not deserve. Stop. Carolyn held up her hand. Stop thanking me. Stop saying you do not deserve things. Derek spent years making both of us feel unworthy. I refuse to continue that pattern. You deserve to be treated like a human being who made difficult choices in an impossible situation. That is what you are. The words surprised Carolyn as she said them, but they were true. She was done shrinking herself to fit other people's expectations. Done apologizing for her own existence. Done accepting less than she deserved. Derek had taken 12 years of her life. He would not take another moment of her energy on bitterness toward a woman who was just as much a victim as she was. She gathered the folder, stood up from the booth. I need to take this to my attorney and probably eventually to the police. Tessa nodded. I understand. I knew that when I gave it to you. Will you testify if it comes to that? Yes. The word was quiet but firm. I am done being afraid. For myself and for my son. I will be in touch, through lawyers at first probably, but maybe eventually just as people. I would like that. Carolyn left cash on the table for the food and coffee. More than enough to cover it. Goodbye, Miles, she said. Take good care of Rex and Lily and Spike. The little boy waved without looking up from his dinosaurs. Bye, nice lady. Carolyn walked out of the diner into the late afternoon light. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The air had turned colder while she was inside. The folder in her hands felt heavy, full of evidence, full of ammunition. Derek had built his empire of lies brick by careful brick over years and years. He had stolen from his wife, his mother, his clients, his mistress. He had manipulated everyone who trusted him. But that empire was about to come crashing down, and Caroline was going to be there to watch it fall. The fire started in the kitchen. Not a real fire, nothing so dramatic as actual flames, but Caroline stood at the sink at 11:45 at night, burning every piece of paper that represented her marriage. One by one, watching each card and note and letter turn to ash. Anniversary cards first. 12 years of declarations. To my darling wife on our first anniversary, you make every day brighter. She lit the corner. Watched the flame consume his handwriting. Watched the words disappear into smoke and embers. Happy 5th anniversary, sweetheart. Here's to 50 more. Ash. 10 years of marriage and I love you more every day. You are my everything. Gone. The words meant nothing now. Maybe they had never meant anything. Maybe Derek had written them on autopilot, performing the role of devoted husband while his real life happened somewhere else entirely. She burned every card, every note he had left on her pillow, every letter he had written during the 2 weeks they spent apart early in their marriage when his grandmother died and he went home to help his mother. Those letters had seemed so loving at the time, so raw and honest. Now she wondered if he had been with Tessa's predecessor, some other woman she would never know about, while he wrote about missing her desperately. The kitchen filled with smoke. The fire alarm beeped twice before she disconnected it. The smell of burning paper was acrid and sharp, mixing with the lingering scent of the dinner she had not eaten. When it was finally done, when 12 years of written promises were nothing but gray powder, she ran the water, washed the ashes down the drain. Then she slid down the cabinet, sat on the cold tile floor. The rage had not diminished. If anything, it had grown stronger over the past few days. Each new piece of evidence, each new revelation about Derek's deception, added fuel to a fire that showed no signs of burning out. She sat on the cold tile floor of the kitchen where she had cooked him thousands of meals, where she had taught Sophie to make pancakes, where she had held Ethan when he was colicky and nothing else would soothe him. I gave him everything, she said out loud. The words echoed in the empty room. No one was there to hear. I gave him absolutely everything. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, she pulled it from her pocket. Natalie's name on the screen. A text message marked urgent. Derek's law firm just announced his suspension pending investigation. Effective immediately. Call me. Carolyn stared at the words. Suspended. Not just under investigation anymore. Publicly suspended. The partners had decided they could not hide this anymore, could not protect one of their own from the consequences of his actions. She called Natalie back. How did this happen so fast? The DNA test made headlines. The financial records we submitted in the emergency motion became part of the public court file. The partners at his firm had no choice. They had to act or risk their own reputation. What does this mean? It means he is done professionally. No law firm in the state will touch him after this. His license will almost certainly be suspended pending the criminal investigation. Criminal investigation. Carolyn repeated the words slowly, tasting them. So it is really happening. The district attorney's office called me this afternoon. They want to meet with you and with Tessa. They are building a case. For what charges? Wire fraud, tax evasion, client fund misappropriation, forgery. Natalie paused. They mentioned the possibility of federal charges too. The offshore accounts cross jurisdictional lines. Federal charges. That meant federal prison if convicted. Years, potentially. Real consequences for real crimes. Caroline thought she would feel triumphant hearing this news. She had fantasized about Derek facing justice, about watching his smug confidence crumble as the walls closed in around him. Instead, she felt hollow, empty in a way that had nothing to do with hunger. The children, she said. What do I tell Sophie and Ethan? As little as possible for now. The details will come out eventually, but right now, they do not need to know everything. They just need to know their father made some serious mistakes and is facing consequences for them. Sophie is 11. She reads the news on her phone. She's going to find out everything whether I tell her or not. Then be honest with her. Age-appropriate honest. You know your daughter better than anyone. Carolyn ended the call, sat on the cold kitchen floor for a few more minutes, processing. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel. Did you see the news? Derek's firm dumped him. The whole town is talking. I heard. Are you okay? No, but I am going to be. She stood up finally. Her joints ached from sitting on the hard tile. She was 40 years old. No, 38. She kept forgetting her own age lately, and her body was not as forgiving as it used to be. She walked through the dark house, room by room, memory by memory, the living room where they had celebrated 11 Christmases, where Sophie took her first steps, where Ethan had his first birthday party, surrounded by family who thought they knew Derek, the dining room where they had hosted dinner parties for his law firm colleagues, where she had made elaborate meals that Derek complimented in front of guests and criticized in private, where she had learned to smile even when she was exhausted because being a good hostess was part of being a good wife, the master bedroom where she had slept beside him for 12 years, where they had made love and made babies and made peace after arguments, where she had lain awake so many nights wondering why she felt so alone in her own marriage, the home office where Derek worked late so many evenings, where he took calls behind closed doors and claimed they were about sensitive client matters, where she had respected his privacy because she trusted him absolutely. She walked into his office now. The room still smelled faintly of his cologne. His desk was still here. She had not had the energy to move it. His computer was gone, taken by the forensic accountants. She opened his desk drawer. The lawyers had already been through everything, but she was looking for something different. Not evidence, memories, old receipts, business cards from conferences. A broken watch he kept meaning to get fixed. A photograph from their wedding day. Young Caroline in white lace. Young Derek in a rented tuxedo. Both of them smiling like they had the whole world figured out. She did not recognize either person in that photograph anymore. Underneath the photo was another folder. Thin, unlabeled, buried beneath years of accumulated desk debris. Caroline opened it with a sick feeling in her stomach. Medical records, from a clinic 2 towns over. The logo on the letterhead was unfamiliar. She read through them. Her hands started shaking halfway through the first page. The records were Derek's, dated 2 years ago, documentation of a vasectomy procedure. Follow-up appointments confirming the procedure was successful. For 2 years, Carolyn had wondered why she was not getting pregnant again. They had talked about having a third child. Derek had said he wanted one too. More kids meant a bigger family, more love, more life. Let nature take its course, he had told her when she worried about her age and fertility windows. It will happen when it is meant to happen. It was never going to happen. He had made absolutely certain of that. And he had let her blame herself. Let her cry in the bathroom after negative pregnancy tests. Let her make appointments with fertility specialists that she never kept because Derek always found a reason to cancel. Conflicts at work, family obligations, concerns about the cost. He had taken away her choice, her body, her future. And he had done it without ever telling her. The rage erupted again, hotter than before, brighter than the fire that had consumed his anniversary cards. She screamed, just once. A raw, primal sound that tore through the empty house and echoed off the walls. Then she gathered the papers, added them to the growing evidence pile. One more betrayal, one more lie, one more reason to burn his world to ashes and salt the earth where it had stood. She texted Natalie, found something else. Vasectomy records from 2 years ago. He never told me. He let me think I could not get pregnant. The response came within seconds. This demonstrates an extended pattern of deception and reproductive coercion. I am so sorry, Caroline. We will add this to the filing. Are you okay? Was she okay? No. She was the opposite of okay. She was sitting in her cheating husband's home office at midnight, discovering that he had secretly sterilized himself while letting her grieve the children she thought she could not have. But she was still standing, still fighting, still refusing to disappear. "I will survive," she typed back. "I always do. It is the only thing I am good at." The courtroom was more crowded than Caroline had ever seen it. News vans lined the street outside the Westbrook County Courthouse. Reporters jostled for position on the stone steps. Local television cameras competed with national news stringers for the best angles. Derek Ashford's spectacular fall from grace had captured the public imagination. The handsome attorney who tried to humiliate his wife and accidentally revealed his own double life. The secret child, the stolen money, the web of lies that grew larger with every passing day. It was the kind of story that wrote itself, and everyone wanted to be there for the climax. Caroline walked into the courthouse wearing the red dress, the one Derek had always said was too bright, too attention-seeking, too much. The one he had asked her not to wear to his firm's holiday party because it might give people the wrong impression about what kind of woman she was. She was done caring about impressions. She was done calibrating herself to his standards. She was done being less than so that he could feel like more. Her heels clicked on the marble floor with a confidence she did not entirely feel. But fake it until you make it, her mother used to say. Eventually the feeling catches up. Natalie walked beside her, briefcase heavy with documents. "Are you ready for this? Does it matter if I am not?" "I suppose not, but I am asking anyway." "I am ready to be done. That is all I know for certain." The courtroom doors opened. Carolyn walked in. Derek was already seated at the defendant's table, but he was alone. Marcus Webb had formally withdrawn representation 2 weeks ago. No other attorney in the county would take the case. He looked different than the last time she had seen him. Smaller somehow. The expensive suit looked wrong on him now. Too big in the shoulders, too loose in the waist. He had lost weight. His face was gaunt. His hair had not been professionally styled in weeks. He looked like a man whose foundations had crumbled beneath him. Good. Gwendolyn was not in the gallery this time. She had hired her own attorneys to pursue civil action against her son for the embezzled trust funds. The Ashford family was officially at war with itself. Judge Holloway entered. Everyone rose. Everyone sat. "Before we proceed with today's matters," the judge said, "I want to acknowledge that the circumstances of this case have evolved significantly since our last hearing. Mr. Ashford, I understand you are representing yourself today. Is that correct?" Derek stood. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "Yes, Your Honor. I was unable to secure alternative representation." "I see." The judge's expression was unreadable. "Very well. Ms. Brennan, please proceed with your motions." Natalie stood, professional, controlled, devastating. "Your Honor, we are requesting final orders in this divorce matter, given the extensive evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and deception that has come to light since our initial filing. We believe immediate resolution is in the best interests of the minor children." She presented the evidence. Methodically, thoroughly, the forged mortgage, the stolen trust funds, the offshore accounts, the secret vasectomy, the 4 years of support payments to a hidden mistress and child. Each revelation landed in the silent courtroom like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples of shock spreading outward. Carolyn watched Derek as his secrets were laid bare. His face cycled through the stages she had come to recognize over months of divorce proceedings. Denial, anger, bargaining. The Darvo playbook that men like him always relied on. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Make yourself the real victim. Make everyone else the villain. "This is character assassination," Derek said when given the opportunity to respond. His voice shook slightly. "My wife has manipulated this entire situation. She turned my own evidence against me. She conspired with my mistress to destroy my reputation." "Mr. Ashford," Judge Holloway interrupted, her voice cold enough to freeze water. "Your own DNA test revealed your affair. Your own financial records reveal your fraud. Your own medical records reveal your deception about the vasectomy. Please explain to me how your wife orchestrated evidence that you yourself created and controlled." Silence. Derek started. "Take your time, Mr. Ashford. I am genuinely curious." More silence. "The evidence speaks for itself, Your Honor." Natalie's voice was calm. "We are asking for full custody of the minor children. We are asking for the marital residence. We are asking for an equitable division of all recovered assets with additional consideration given to Mrs. Ashford given the extent of her husband's fraud. Mr. Ashford, do you have a response? Derek stood again. His hands were shaking visibly now. I love my children. I have been a good father to them. Whatever mistakes I made in my marriage, I never failed them. You forged their mother's signature to steal from the equity of their home, Judge Holloway said flatly. You hid money that should have supported their education and a future. You fathered a child you kept secret from them for 4 years. These are not the actions of a man prioritizing his children. I was trying to provide for them. Everything I did was to ensure they would have opportunities. You were trying to provide for yourself, Mr. Ashford. For your mistress, for your secret son, your legitimate children were an afterthought in your financial calculations. The words hit Derek like physical blows. Carolyn watched him flinch, watched the last of his composure crumble. Your Honor, he said, his voice breaking, please, I am begging you, do not take my children away from me. For a moment, just a moment, Carolyn almost felt sorry for him. This man she had loved, this man she had built a life with, this man who was watching everything he had ever valued slip through his fingers. Then she remembered the forged signature, the stolen money, the secret vasectomy, the years and years of lies. He did not deserve her pity. He did not deserve anything from her at all. The emergency motions are granted, Judge Holloway announced. Full custody of the minor children, Sophie and Ethan Ashford, is awarded to their mother, Carolyn Ashford. Mr. Ashford will have supervised visitation every other Saturday, pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings against him. Criminal proceedings, the words hung in the air. The marital residence is awarded to Mrs. Ashford. Mr. Ashford is ordered to pay child support according to the schedule established by this court. Given the documented fraud, Mrs. Ashford is entitled to 70% of all recovered marital assets. 70%, nearly $1.4 million, once the offshore accounts were untangled. Money that had been stolen from their family, now being returned. Additionally, the judge continued, I am formally referring all financial evidence in this matter to the district attorney's office. The conduct documented in these proceedings appears to violate multiple state and federal statutes. That determination is outside my jurisdiction, but it is very much within someone else's. The gavel came down. It was over. The marriage, the lies. The 12 years of building something that had never really existed. Derek tried to approach Caroline as she gathered her things. 2 court officers stepped between them. Carolyn, shh. His voice was desperate, pleading, please, just let me explain. Just give me 5 minutes. She looked at him. This man she had given everything to. This man who had taken and taken and taken until there was nothing left but the hollow shell of a partnership. There is nothing to explain, Derek, and there is nothing left to say. I am sorry. I know I cannot fix what I did, but I am sorry for all of it. No, you are not. Her voice was calm, certain. You are sorry you got caught. You are sorry your life is falling apart. You are sorry that your lies finally caught up with you. But you are not sorry for what you did. You cannot be sorry for something you have been doing deliberately for years. That is not true. It is the only truth that matters. She picked up her purse, adjusted the strap on her shoulder. Goodbye, Derek. I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for, because it was never me, and it was never our children. And I do not think you even know what it is yourself. She walked out of the courtroom, did not look back. Outside, the November sun was bright. The air was cold. Reporters shouted questions that she did not answer. Rachel was waiting on the sidewalk with sunflowers. Again. You and your sunflowers, Caroline said, almost smiling. They face the sun. They grow toward the light. That is what you are doing now. Caroline took the flowers, held them against her red dress. Is it really over? The divorce is, the criminal case is just beginning. But your part, the marriage, the lease, the decade of deception, that part is over. I should feel something, relief or vindication. Instead, I just feel tired. That is what survival feels like sometimes. Rachel put an arm around her shoulders. The other feelings will come later. Right now, tired is enough. They walked to Rachel's car, past the reporters, past the cameras, past the curiosity of strangers who thought they knew this story, but only saw the headlines. The real story was more complicated. It was about a woman who had trusted too much and lost too much and somehow found the strength to start over. That story was just beginning. The night Caroline broke down arrived without warning. She had been functioning, day by day, court appearance by court appearance, document review by document review. She had been managing the children's questions and the neighbors' whispered conversations and her own mother-in-law's cold silence. She had been coping. Then Tuesday night arrived. Nothing special about Tuesday, no court date, no new revelations, no phone calls from Natalie or Tessa or anyone else. Just an ordinary evening in an extraordinarily broken life. Sophie and Ethan were at Derek's parents' house for court-ordered visitation. Even now, after everything, Gwendolyn still had rights as a grandmother. The children would spend one night there per week until further notice. The house was empty, silent in a way that felt oppressive. Carolyn made dinner, ate 3 bites, threw the rest away. She tried to read, could not concentrate. She tried to watch the television. The noise felt like an assault. She tried to sleep. Her body refused. At 2 in the morning, she found herself sitting on the bathroom floor, not crying beyond crying, in that place where tears would actually be a relief because at least tears meant feeling something. She sat on the cold tile with her back against the bathtub, the same bathtub where she had given Sophie her first bath, where she had soaked away the aches of pregnancy with Ethan, where she had hidden with the door locked on nights when Derek was being particularly cold and she needed a few minutes alone. The memories pressed in from all sides. 12 years of them. Good moments and bad moments, and ordinary moments, all jumbled together. Which parts had been real? She still did not know, might never know. Derek was not capable of telling her the truth even now, and she would never be able to sort the genuine from the manufactured. Maybe it did not matter anymore. Maybe the question itself was pointless. But it felt like it mattered. It felt like everything she had ever believed about her own life was now uncertain. Was she a good mother? Derek had told her she was, but Derek lied about everything. Was she a good person? Derek had praised her character, but Derek's opinion was worthless. Was she lovable at all? Derek had said he loved her, but Derek had also been sleeping with another woman and supporting a secret child while he said it. Every compliment he had ever given her felt tainted now. Every word of encouragement, every expression of pride or affection. I do not know who I am anymore. The thought arrived with perfect clarity, terrifying in its simplicity. For 12 years, she had been Derek's wife. She had defined herself in relation to him. Her role, her purpose, her identity. Now that was gone. And what was left? A woman sitting on a bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, unable to answer the most basic questions about her own existence. She pulled out her phone, started typing in the search bar with shaking fingers. Signs you were married to a narcissist. The results loaded instantly. Dozens of articles, hundreds of discussion forums, thousands of women telling stories that sounded exactly like hers. Gaslighting. The manipulation of someone's perception of reality, making them doubt their own memories, feelings, and sanity. She read the definition 3 times. Each time, specific memories surfaced. That did not happen that way, Caroline. You are remembering it wrong. I never said that. You must have misunderstood. You are being paranoid. I worry about your mental state sometimes. Love bombing. The overwhelming of a target with affection and attention to create emotional dependency. The first year of their relationship. The constant calls and text. The surprise flowers at work. The weekend getaways planned without her input because he just wanted to make her happy. She had thought it was romantic. She had not recognized it as a strategy. Devaluation. The gradual withdrawal of affection and approval to keep the victim off balance and seeking validation. Year 4, year 5, year 6. The way his compliments became less frequent. The way his criticisms became more pointed. The way she started working harder and harder to earn approval that came less and less often. Discard. The abandonment of a victim who is no longer useful or who has started to see through the manipulation. That was where they were now. Derek had discarded her, or tried to, when she filed for divorce. He had tried to destroy her in court so she could not destroy him first. She read article after article, forum post after forum post, stories from women who could have been telling her own history. At 4:30 in the morning, she finally put down the phone. I was not crazy. The thought was so powerful it felt like a physical sensation, like chains breaking, like doors opening. I was not crazy. I was not irrational. I was not paranoid or ungrateful or impossible to please. I was being systematically manipulated by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The relief was overwhelming. It crashed over her in waves, mixing with grief and rage and something that might have been the first stirrings of hope. She was not damaged. She was not broken. She was not the problem. Oh, she was a survivor of psychological abuse who was finally learning to name what had happened to her. The tears came then, hot and messy and long overdue. She cried on the bathroom floor until her eyes burned and her throat ached. Cried for the woman she had been before Derek. Cried for the years she had lost. Cried for the children who would carry the scars of their parents' failed marriage. When the tears finally stopped, she stood up. Her joints protested. Her body was stiff from hours on cold tile. She washed her face, looked in the mirror. The same hollow eyes as before. The same exhausted face, but something different underneath. Something harder, more certain. She had survived. Not just the marriage and the lies and the divorce. She had survived the darkest night of her soul. She had sat with her own brokenness, and she had not shattered into pieces. That meant something. That proved something. She walked to Sophie's room, stood in the doorway as morning light began to filter through the curtains. Her daughter's space was neat and organized, decorated with posters of pop stars and athletes. Books lined the shelves. Sophie was a voracious reader. A collection of rocks from various family vacations sat on the windowsill. Sophie would need honesty, age-appropriate but genuine. She was too smart to accept comfortable lies, and she would resent Carolyn later if she found out the truth from someone else. She walked to Ethan's room. His space was messier, more chaotic. Lego creations covered every surface. Superhero posters competed for wall space. A stuffed elephant named Mr. Trunk sat on his pillow. He was 8 years old and supposedly too mature for stuffed animals. But Mr. Trunk had been there since birth. Ethan would need protection. Careful explanations. Time to process at his own pace. Carolyn stood in his doorway and made a silent promise. I will not let your father's poison destroy your capacity for trust. I will not let his lies become your inheritance. I will break this cycle if it is the last thing I do. She went back to her own bedroom, changed the sheets, opened the windows to let in fresh air despite the November cold. Then she sat down at her desk and started writing. Not a letter to Derek. He did not deserve any more of her words. A letter to herself. Dear Carolyn, she wrote, this is the story of what happened to you. This is the truth you need to remember when the doubts come back. This is the proof that you were not crazy, not broken, not the problem. You were married to a man who systematically deceived you for 12 years. He stole your money. He stole your fertility. He stole your confidence and your peace of mind. But he did not steal your soul. He did not steal your capacity for love. He did not steal your ability to start over. You are going to survive this. You are going to build a new life. And someday, you are going to look back on this night and recognize it as the moment you stopped being a victim and started being a survivor. She wrote for 2 hours, page after page, everything she was feeling, everything she was learning, everything she needed to remember. When she finally stopped, the sun was fully up. The house was still empty, but no longer oppressive. Her phone buzzed, a text from Tessa. I do not know if this is appropriate to say, but I was thinking about you. I hope you are okay. I know how hard this is. I am here if you need to talk. Carolyn looked at the message. The other woman, reaching out, offering support in a situation that should have made them enemies. Thank you, she typed back. I am okay, or I will be. That is the only thing I know for certain right now. Tessa's response came quickly. That is all any of us can do. Survive today. Try again tomorrow. Eventually, the trying becomes living. Simple words, true words. Caroline saved the message, put her phone away, made coffee. The darkness would come back. She knew that. There would be more bad nights, more bathroom floors, more moments when the weight felt unbearable. But she had survived the first one, and she would survive the next one. And eventually, maybe, she would stop just surviving and start actually living again. For now, though, survival was enough. 3 months later, Carolyn walked into Dr. Constance Reed's office for what she hoped would be one of her final regular sessions. The room had become familiar over the past 12 weeks. The soft lighting, the comfortable chairs positioned at exactly the right angle for conversation, the strategically placed tissue boxes, the diplomas on the wall, and the live plants by the window. This was where she had learned to put words to what had happened to her. This was where she had reconstructed her sense of self from the wreckage of her marriage. "How are you feeling about today?" Dr. Reed asked. She was a woman in her mid-50s with calm eyes and a voice like warm honey. She never pushed, never judged, just listened and asked questions that made Caroline think. Nervous, hopeful, terrified, Caroline settled into her usual chair. "The same mix I have felt for months, but stronger today." "What is making it stronger?" "The custody ruling is final. Derek's criminal case goes to trial next month. The children have started adjusting to their new normal. Everything is moving forward." "And you are not sure you are ready?" "I am not sure I will ever be ready, but I do not think that matters. Ready or not, the future is coming." Dr. Reed smiled slightly. "That is remarkably insightful. Most people spend years waiting to feel ready before they allow themselves to move forward. I do not have years. My children need a functional mother now. Not someday when I have all my emotional pieces arranged perfectly." Over the past 3 months, Carolyn had done the work. The hard, unglamorous, often painful work of recovery. She had learned to identify the patterns Derek had used to control her. The gaslighting that made her doubt her own perceptions. The love bombing followed by withdrawal that kept her constantly off balance. The financial manipulation that made her dependent while pretending to be generosity. She had learned that leaving an abusive relationship was not failure, that staying was not stupidity, that both were survival strategies employed by people doing their best in impossible circumstances. She had learned that healing was not linear. Some days felt like progress. Some days felt like starting over from scratch. The only way forward was through. "What about the children?" Dr. Reed asked. "How are they adjusting?" "Sophie is angry, which I am told is healthy and appropriate." "It is. Anger means she is processing." She asked hard questions about Derek, about why I stayed so long, about whether I knew what he was doing and chose to ignore it. "What do you tell her?" "The truth, age-appropriate but honest, that her father made choices that hurt a lot of people, that I did not know the full extent of those choices until recently, that I stayed because I loved him and believed in our family, and that believing in something does not make you stupid. It makes you human." That is a good answer. She does not always accept it, but she is listening. That is all I can ask. And Ethan? Ethan is quieter. He does not ask as many questions, but he watches everything. He has nightmares sometimes. He wants to sleep with the light on. That is normal for his age and what he has been through. I know. I just wish I could protect him from all of it. Take the burden off his small shoulders. You cannot protect him from the truth. You can only help him carry it. Caroline nodded. She had learned that lesson the hard way over the past months. Children were not served by comfortable lies. They needed honest adults who would help them make sense of a confusing world. "There is something else," she said slowly. "Something I have been thinking about." "Tell me." "I want to write about this. My experience, what I learned, what I wish I had known earlier." Carolyn met Dr. Reed's eyes. "I think there are other women out there who are living the life I lived, who are being manipulated and gaslit and made to feel crazy, who do not have the words yet for what is happening to them. You want to give them the words. I want to share what I learned, not as an expert, just as someone who survived. Maybe it will help someone recognize the patterns earlier than I did. Maybe it will give someone permission to leave." That sounds like a meaningful project. It terrifies me, putting it all out there, making myself vulnerable. But I think it might be important. Important for others? Or important for you? Carolyn considered the question. "Both. I think writing it down will help me process. And I think sharing it might help someone else survive. Reed smiled. That is often how healing works. We help ourselves by helping others. We find meaning in our pain by transforming it into something useful. After the session, Caroline drove home through streets that were familiar in a new way. The same houses she had driven past for years, but seen now through different eyes. She was not the same woman who had lived here before. That woman had been afraid of her husband's disapproval, had calibrated her words and actions to avoid conflict, had shrunk herself smaller and smaller to fit into the space he allowed her. This woman, the woman she was becoming, took up space unapologetically. At home, she started making changes. Small ones at first, moving furniture, painting walls, reclaiming rooms that had been dominated by Derek's preferences. She painted Sophie's room the bright purple her daughter had always wanted. Derek had said it was too garish, too attention-seeking. Sophie spent an entire afternoon helping, getting more paint on herself than on the walls. She adopted a dog from the shelter, a golden retriever mix named Biscuit, who wagged his tail at everything and demanded belly rubs with shameless enthusiasm. Derek had always said no to pets, too messy, too much work, too disruptive to his carefully controlled environment. Biscuit did not care about custody arrangements or criminal trials. He just wanted walks and treats and someone to scratch behind his ears. There was something healing about that simplicity. One evening, Sophie came to her with a question that stopped Caroline in her tracks. "Mom, do you think Dad ever really loved us?" They were sitting on the back porch watching Ethan throw a ball for Biscuit in the fading light. The question came out of nowhere, as Sophie's questions often did. Caroline thought carefully before answering. "I think your father loves you as much as he is capable of loving anyone. But I also think there is something broken inside him that makes it hard for him to love the way other people do." "What do you mean?" "Some people love with an open hand. They give freely and trust that good things will come back to them. Other people love with a closed fist. They hold on tight and try to control everything because they are afraid of losing what they have. Dad is the closed fist kind." "Yes, I think so." "Why did you marry him if he was like that?" Caroline took a deep breath. "Because I did not see it at first. He was very good at pretending to be the open hand kind. And by the time I started noticing the truth, I was already committed to our family." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, processing. "I am angry at him," she finally said. "Like really angry, for what he did to you, to us, to that other lady and her kid." "That is okay. Anger is a normal response to being hurt. Just do not let it eat you up inside. Feel it, learn from it, and then let it go when you are ready." "What if I am never ready?" "Then we will deal with that when we get there. There is no timeline for processing betrayal." Sophie leaned her head against Caroline's shoulder. For a moment, she was not an angry preteen wrestling with the complicated emotions. She was just a little girl who needed her mother. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything in the world." Ethan came running over with Biscuit at his heels, both of them muddy and panting. "Mom, Biscuit caught the ball in midair. Did you see? He is the best dog ever." "The best dog ever," Caroline agreed, "but also the muddiest. You both need baths." "Can Biscuit take a bath with me?" "No, dogs get the hose outside, humans get the tub inside. Those are the rules." Ethan groaned but accepted this judgment. He was adaptable that way. He rolled with changes in a way that made Caroline both proud and worried. Proud of his resilience, worried about what that resilience might cost him later. That night, after both children were clean and in bed, Caroline sat at her computer and started writing. Not the book, not yet. She was not ready for something that ambitious. Just her story, the beginning of it. The night she sat on the bathroom floor and finally understood what had happened to her. She wrote until midnight, then saved the file and closed her laptop. It was a start. The day of Derek's sentencing hearing arrived on a cold December morning. Caroline was not required to attend. Natalie had explained that the criminal proceedings were separate from the divorce, handled by prosecutors rather than private attorneys. But she had the right to be present if she wanted. She wanted, not for revenge, not for vindication. She had moved past those feelings months ago. She wanted to be there because this was the end of a chapter. The final closing of a door that had defined her life for 12 years. The federal courthouse was larger than the county courthouse where the divorce had been finalized. Higher ceilings, more marble, more guards with more serious expressions. The gallery was packed with reporters and spectators. Derek Ashford's case had received national attention. The handsome attorney whose attempt to expose his wife's infidelity had backfired so spectacularly. The secret child, the stolen money, the web of lies that unraveled so dramatically in open court. It was the kind of story that fascinated people, a cautionary tale about hubris and deception. Caroline took a seat in the back row. She did not want to be noticed. She was not here to be part of the spectacle. Derek was brought in by federal marshals. He wore an orange jumpsuit instead of one of his expensive suits. His hands were cuffed in front of him. His hair, once so carefully styled, had grown out and gone gray at the temples. He looked like a stranger, like someone she had never known at all. The prosecutors presented their final arguments. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, email trails, testimony from former clients and colleagues. Tessa Kimball had testified earlier in the trial, providing documentation that tied everything together. Derek had pleaded guilty to most charges rather than risk a trial he could not win. Wire fraud, tax evasion, client fund misappropriation, the forgery charge had been handled at the state level, adding another layer to his legal troubles. The judge reviewed the sentencing guidelines. The prosecutors recommended 7 years. Derek's court-appointed attorney argued for leniency. "My client accepts full responsibility for his actions," the attorney said. "He has cooperated with investigators. He has expressed genuine remorse for the harm he caused." Carolyn almost laughed at that. Derek did not know what genuine remorse felt like. He only knew regret at being caught. The judge asked if Derek wanted to make a statement before sentencing. He stood slowly. His shoulders were hunched in a way Caroline had never seen before. The arrogance that had defined him for as long as she had known him was completely absent. "Your Honor," he said, his voice barely audible, "I have hurt many people through my actions. My former wife, my children, my mother, my clients who trusted me with their assets. I do not expect forgiveness. I only want to acknowledge the harm I have caused." He paused, seemed to struggle with the next words. "I was raised to believe that success meant accumulating wealth and status at any cost. I was taught that rules were for other people, that intelligence and ambition entitled me to take shortcuts. I do not say this to excuse my behavior, only to explain how I became the person I became." Another pause, a deep breath. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand how I lost my way so completely, and I will carry the weight of what I did until the day I die." It was the most honest thing Carolyn had ever heard him say. She did not forgive him. She probably never would. But she recognized something real in those words, something that might eventually become the foundation for actual change. Or might not. Derek was a skilled performer. Even now, even broken and facing prison, he might be playing a role. She would never know for certain. And she had decided that was okay. His internal transformation, or lack thereof, was not her responsibility anymore. The judge considered the statement and the evidence, then delivered the sentence. "Derek James Ashford, you have pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges involving financial fraud and deception. Your crimes represent a systematic betrayal of trust. Trust placed in you by your wife, your mother, your clients, and the institutions that licensed you to practice law. You were given every advantage in life: education, professional success, a family, and you chose to squander those advantages in pursuit of a secret life built on lies. I do not believe you are sorry for what you did. I believe you are sorry you were caught. There is a significant difference. I sentence you to 6 years in federal prison with eligibility for parole after 4 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, including your former wife, your mother, and the clients whose funds you misappropriated." The gavel came down. 6 years, not as long as he could have received, but real time, real consequences, real accountability. Caroline watched the marshals lead Derek away. He glanced back at the gallery as he walked out, searching for something, someone. Their eyes met for a moment. Just a second. She did not look away, did not smile, did not frown. She just watched him go, and then it was over. Outside the courthouse, the December air was sharp and cold. The sun was bright despite the temperature. Carolyn stood on the steps for a moment, breathing in the winter air. Someone touched her arm. Tessa. I was not sure you would come, Tessa said. I was not sure either, but I needed to see the end of it. Did it help? Carolyn considered the question. I do not know yet. Ask me in a year. Tessa nodded. She understood the uncertainty. She was living her own version of it. How is Miles? Good. Confused sometimes, but good. Tessa smiled slightly. He asks about Sophie and Ethan, wants to know when he can play with his big brother and sister again. Maybe next week. Sophie has been asking too. They had introduced the children carefully over the past months. Supervised meetings at the park, ice cream outings, casual play dates that slowly became less awkward. Sophie had resisted at first. Miles represented everything that had destroyed her family. But children were adaptable, and Miles was impossible to hate. He was just a little boy who wanted playmates. I am moving next month, Tessa said, taking that job in Portland, near my sister. I know, Sophie told me. She is sad about it. We will visit in video chat. The kids should know each other. Whatever else happened, they are family. Family. The word had become so complicated over the past year. Send me your new address, Caroline said. I will make sure the kids write letters. Sophie has terrible handwriting, but she is good with words. Thank you for everything. You did not have to be kind to me. Most women in your situation would not have been. What women in my situation are too exhausted for grudges. Besides, Caroline shrugged, we are both survivors of the same storm. Survivors should stick together. Tessa hugged her, a brief, fierce embrace. Then she walked away. Her car was parked down the block. Miles's car seat was visible through the back window. Caroline watched her go, another chapter closing. She pulled out her phone, texted Rachel, "It is over. He got 6 years. I am okay." The response came immediately. Coming over with wine and terrible movies. Be there in an hour. Caroline smiled. Put the phone away. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead. Raising children alone, rebuilding finances, figuring out who she was outside of her marriage. But for the first time in months, the uncertainty felt more like possibility than threat. She walked to her car, drove home through streets decorated with holiday lights. Christmas was in 3 weeks. The first Christmas in their new configuration. Sophie and Ethan were at home with the babysitter. Biscuit would be losing his mind with excitement when she walked through the door. There would be homework to review, and dinner to make, and the ordinary chaos of single motherhood. And underneath all of it, a quiet sense of peace that she was only beginning to recognize. This was her life now, messy and complicated and entirely her own. 6 months later, the house was full of light and noise and life. Carolyn stood at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for a dinner party that had somehow grown from 4 people to 14. The afternoon sun poured through the windows she had stripped of their heavy curtains. The walls glowed with the warm colors she had chosen herself. Music played from Sophie's Bluetooth speaker. Something poppy and energetic that Ethan complained about, but secretly enjoyed. Biscuit lay in his favorite spot by the back door, tail thumping occasionally when someone walked past. He had settled into their family like he had always been there. "Mom," Sophie's voice came from the living room. "Aunt Rachel is here, and she brought flowers again." "Of course she did," Carolyn called back. "Let her in." Rachel appeared in the kitchen doorway with an armful of sunflowers. Her red hair was wild from the wind outside. Her grin was as bright as the flowers she carried. I know, more sunflowers. I am a cliché." "You are a wonderful cliché." Caroline accepted the flowers and a hug. "Thank you for coming early to help." As if I would miss it. Besides, I had to escape my own house. Tom is attempting to assemble patio furniture, and the swearing is reaching Olympic levels. They worked side by side in the kitchen, the easy rhythm of old friends who did not need to fill every silence with words. Rachel prepared appetizers while Caroline continued with the main course. Ethan ran through periodically to steal pieces of cheese from the platter, and they pretended not to notice. The guest list had grown organically. Rachel and her husband, Tom. Natalie, who had become something like a friend over the past year. Dr. Reed, who Carolyn had invited impulsively and who had accepted with genuine warmth. A few neighbors, a couple of mothers from Sophie's school who had shown unexpected kindness during the worst months, and Tessa with Miles, visiting from Portland for the week. The children's relationship had blossomed unexpectedly. Sophie had appointed herself Miles's protector and teacher, showing him how to build Lego structures and play basic video games. Ethan tolerated his younger half-brother with the resigned patience of a middle child. Miles adored them both with the uncomplicated devotion of a 5-year-old who just wanted to belong. They were making it work. Not perfectly, not without complications. But work was being done. "You seem different," Rachel said, arranging crackers on a plate with unnecessary precision. "Lighter, more settled." "I feel different. For the first time in years, I actually feel like myself. Not someone's wife, or someone's problem, or someone's project. Just me. I like this version of you." "So do I." The doorbell rang. The first guests were arriving. Carolyn wiped her hands on a towel and went to welcome them. The house filled gradually with people and conversation and warmth. Sophie played hostess with a maturity beyond her 11 years, offering drinks and making introductions. Ethan showed Miles his collection of superhero figures with proprietary pride. Biscuit greeted everyone enthusiastically and was rewarded with forbidden treats when Caroline was not looking. At one point, she found herself standing in the corner of her living room, just watching. This house that she had reclaimed, these people who had become her community, this life that she was building from the wreckage of her old one. Tessa appeared beside her with a glass of wine. "You look happy," Tessa said quietly. "I think I might actually be happy. It is a strange feeling after so long. I understand. I did not realize how much tension I was carrying until I started living without it." "How is Portland?" "Good. Hard sometimes. Lonely, but good." Tessa watched Miles laughing at something Ethan had said. "He is thriving there. He has friends. He is doing well in kindergarten. And being near my sister has helped more than I expected." "I am glad." "I was thinking," Tessa hesitated, "maybe this summer, if you are open to it, the kids could spend a week with me in Portland. I would take good care of them." Carolyn considered it. A year ago, she could not have imagined trusting Tessa with her children. But trust had been rebuilt slowly, interaction by interaction, truth by truth. "Let us talk about it closer to summer, but I am not opposed." Tessa's face lit up. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Natalie joined them, one wineglass in hand. "What are we discussing? Please tell me it is not legal matters. I am off duty." Summer vacation planning," Caroline said. "Decidedly non-legal." "Perfect. I approve of any conversation that does not involve custody schedules or asset division." "Speaking of which," Carolyn turned to her former attorney. "Thank you for everything. I know I was difficult to work with sometimes." "You were never difficult. You were a woman fighting for her life and her children. Difficult is the husband who hides assets in the Caymans. Difficult is the opposing counsel who files motions at 4:59 on Fridays. You were just determined." "Still, thank you." The party continued. Food was consumed and complimented. Stories were shared and laughed about. Sophie performed a TikTok dance she had learned to mixed reviews from the adults. Ethan taught Miles to play a simplified version of a card game that devolved into chaos almost immediately. As the evening wound down and guests began saying their goodbyes, Caroline found herself on the back porch with Rachel. The night was mild for late spring. Stars were visible beyond the city lights. "A year ago, I was sitting on my bathroom floor at 3 in the morning, Googling signs of narcissistic abuse," Caroline said quietly. "I thought my life was over. And now? Now I know it was just beginning. The real one. The one I get to choose." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Have you heard anything about Derek?" "Not directly. Gwendolyn sends updates sometimes. He is serving his sentence, supposedly attending therapy. Whether any of it is genuine change or just performance, I have no idea." "Does it matter?" "Not to me, not anymore. What he does with his life is his business. My only concern is protecting the children when he eventually gets out." "You have a plan for that?" "Several. Natalie helped me set up legal frameworks, supervise visitation with strict conditions, restraining orders ready to file if necessary. I am not taking any chances. Rachel nodded approvingly. Good. Protect yourself. Protect your kids. That is what matters. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. I started writing, Caroline said eventually. Really writing, not just notes for myself. The book? Sort of. A memoir about everything that happened, the marriage, the lies, the recovery. She took a deep breath. There is a literary agent interested. She thinks it could help other women recognize the signs earlier than I did. Rachel turned to look at her, eyes bright. Caroline, that is incredible. It is terrifying. Putting all of it out there, making myself vulnerable. The best things usually are terrifying, and vulnerable is not the same as weak. Vulnerable is brave. That is what Dr. Reed says. Smart woman, I approve of your therapist. Carolyn laughed. It came easily now, the laughter. She had gone so long without it that each genuine laugh still felt like a small victory. The last guest left around 11. Tessa and Miles headed back to their hotel with promises to return the next day. Sophie and Ethan were negotiating bedtimes and losing. Caroline cleaned up the kitchen, putting dishes in the washer and leftovers in the fridge. The house settled into nighttime quiet around her. Biscuit was already asleep in his bed. The children finally surrendered to exhaustion after one more episode of their favorite show. She walked through the house, turning off lights. The house that had once felt like a cage. The house where she had spent 12 years living a lie. It did not feel like a cage anymore. It felt like home, her home, built on foundations of truth instead of deception. In her bedroom, she sat at the desk where she had written so many pages over the past months. The manuscript was nearly done. 300 pages of pain and healing and hard-won wisdom. She opened the file, read the dedication page she had written last week. For every woman who was told she was crazy. For every mother who stayed longer than she should have because she was trying to protect her children. For everyone who found the courage to leave. And for everyone still finding it. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are surviving. And someday, surviving will become thriving. She closed the laptop. Through the window, the stars were still visible. The same stars that had witnessed her worst moments. The same stars that would witness whatever came next. Caroline Ashford, mother, writer, survivor. And someday soon, something more than survivor. Something that had not existed a year ago. Something she was still learning to name. But for now, survivor was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Carolyn spent 12 years believing a lie, but in the end, the truth did not just set her free. It gave her back her life. If this story touched your heart, if you saw yourself in Caroline's journey, or if you know someone who needs to hear that they are not alone, do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment telling me what part moved you most, and share this story with someone who might need it today. Because sometimes a story is more than entertainment. Sometimes it is permission to start over. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next one.